always loved being alone in the mountains. There's a silence up there that you can't find anywhere else. It's not just the absence of noise, but something deeper, like the mountain is listening back. I've been climbing solo for over a decade now, mostly sticking to trails I know. But this time I wanted to revisit a route I hadn't done in a few years. An old, lesser-known path on the western face of Mount Blanca in Colorado. Nothing too extreme, just remote, quiet, forgotten. I set off just before dawn, headlamp cutting through the pre-dawn mist, boots crunching over frostbitten dirt. The cold bit at my fingers, but I liked it. It reminded me I was somewhere real, far from phones and emails and everything that never seemed to shut up in daily life. The sky gradually lightened to a dull gray, and the wind began to whisper through the trees. I followed the markers easily enough. My GPS showed I was on track, and I felt that familiar buzz of anticipation as the climb began to steepen. I passed a boulder I remembered from the last time, shaped like a wolf's head, its shadow long and toothy in the morning light. About 3 hours in, I reached a bend in the trail where it should have split, one path curving around a rock, outcrop to the left, the other snaking along a narrow ledge to the right. I paused, confused. There was no fork. The leftward path I'd always taken was just gone. In its place stood a steep wall of rock and twisted roots, like the mountain had shifted in the night. I stood there for a full minute, staring at where the path should be, thinking maybe a rock slide had covered it. But there were no fresh slides, no disturbed earth, just a clean slope of untouched terrain. I decided to go around the outcrop another way, bushwhacking uphill through undergrowth. It wasn't too difficult, but it felt unfamiliar, off. The trees looked different, somehow older, more gnarled, their limbs draped in sheets of moss I didn't remember from before. The air grew heavier as I pushed forward, like the altitude had suddenly doubled. I chalked it up to bad sleep or elevation, but deep down, something else itched at me. Something watching. You know that feeling you get when someone stares at you from across a room? It was like that, but everywhere, and silent. Another 20 minutes passed, and I realized the terrain was all wrong. I should have been approaching an open ridge by now, but instead, I found myself in a tight ravine lined with dead trees, limbless trunks, blackened and leaning at odd angles like broken bones. Stopped and checked my GPS. Nothing loaded. The route line was gone, replaced by a blinking dot floating in an empty map. No signal, no satellite lock. Just the faint battery symbol pulsing in the corner. That's when I saw him. He stood maybe 30 feet away, just at the edge of the trees. I couldn't make out his face, but he wore a tan parka, hood up, arms slack by his sides. He didn't move, just stood there watching me. I raised a hand and called out. No response. I waved both arms and yelled louder, but he didn't react. Then slowly he turned, not abruptly, not startled, just turned, like he'd decided he'd seen enough. He walked away into the trees. No rush, no sound, not even the crack of twigs underfoot. I jogged after him, calling, "Hey, are you okay?" But as I crossed where he had been, he was gone. The forest swallowed him whole. I looked around, heart pounding, nothing. No footprints in the soft soil, no branches pushed aside. Just that dense silence again, wrapping tighter now, almost suffocating. I stood still, trying to steady my breath. Something wasn't right. I felt like I had wandered off the map, not just geographically, but existentially. The birds were gone. The wind had stopped. Even the sun above looked duller, like someone had dimmed the sky. I decided right then I needed to turn back. Whatever curiosity I had about the missing trail evaporated. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to be back on familiar ground. But when I tried retracing my steps, everything looked the same. Each tree mirrored the last. The ravine twisted back on itself, and the black trees formed shifting patterns. Like a maze I hadn't entered willingly. My legs ached. My lungs burned. Time dragged in strange ways. My watch said it had only been 40 minutes, but the shadows on the ground told me otherwise. That's when I heard the whistling. It was soft at first, just a single note repeated. Then it changed like a lullaby, slow and deliberate, coming from behind me. I froze. It continued. A broken melody, slightly off-key but persistent. I turned. No one. I started walking faster, then jogging, then nearly sprinting through the underbrush. The whistling never got louder, but it never faded either. It stayed just behind me like it was attached to my shadow. I tripped. Something hard caught my foot and I went down, face first into gravel. Pain shot through my elbow and I cursed out loud. When I looked up, I nearly cried. The original fork in the trail, the one that had disappeared, was right there in front of me, as if it had never been gone. The sun sat low in the sky now, bleeding gold across the ridgeline, and everything looked normal again. The path was dusty and well-worn, just as I remembered it. The trees looked younger here, greener. I didn't hesitate. I ran down that trail like a man being chased. Back at the base, my car sat untouched. Everything was exactly as I had left it. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, just breathing. Later that night, I checked my GPS logs. 2 hours were missing. Completely blank, no data. Like I'd dropped off the grid entirely. I tried telling a friend once, another climber I trusted. He laughed at first, then paused when he saw I wasn't joking. He told me stories he'd heard about hikers in remote areas seeing things, hearing things. He said sometimes places on the mountain shift, like a door opens to something else. Not a dream, not a delusion. Something old, unfamiliar. He didn't say much more. I've never gone back to that side of Mount Blanca. And I don't climb alone anymore. Because somewhere out there, hidden between the trees and folds of stone, there's a place that wasn't supposed to be on any map. A place that knew I was coming. A place that watched. And maybe, just maybe, it's still waiting for me to come back. I wasn't there when it happened, but I know Elaine. She's not someone who scares easily. She's climbed peaks all over Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Nepal, Borneo, you name it. Calm, calculated, always prepared. That's why I believed her completely when she told me what happened on Mount Pulag. And even now, when she brings it up, her voice gets tight and distant, like part of her is still up there listening. It happened in March 2021. Elaine had joined a small hiking group for an overnight climb on Pulag. The plan was straightforward. Start early, reach the summit by late afternoon, pitch camp, spend the night under the stars, then hike back down the next morning. Mount Pulag isn't the toughest climb in the region, but it holds a kind of quiet reverence. Locals call it a sacred mountain. Many tribes believe it's the final resting place for souls. Elaine isn't superstitious, but she respects places like that. She told me she felt uneasy even before they started. The weather was unusually foggy. The trail was quiet, save for the crunch of boots and the occasional murmur between group members. Elaine hiked beside their guide, a local man named Reuben, who had led dozens of climbs before. He didn't talk much, but he kept glancing over his shoulder, like counting heads wasn't enough, like he was watching for something that might try to join them uninvited. By the time they reached the summit, the fog had thickened into a milky wall around the camp. They could barely see 10 feet ahead. Still, they pitched their tents in a small open clearing between the grass and a rocky outcrop. There were 5 of them total: Elaine, Reuben, 2 other climbers, and a spare tent they'd brought for gear and emergency use. The sun had already dipped below the fog, casting everything in that weird blue twilight that makes even familiar things feel wrong. Elaine didn't eat much that night. She said she felt nauseous, not sick, but like something in her gut was twisting. The others chatted softly, trying to warm up with canned food and coffee, but no one laughed. The mood was heavy, off. She crawled into her tent around 9 p.m. The air was damp and cold. Wind brushed against the nylon fabric, but it didn't howl like it normally does at elevation. It hissed, like something whispering too low to understand. She tried to fall asleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she thought she heard movement, light footsteps, crunching softly over gravel. Not just once. Over and over, circling, pacing. She sat up and unzipped the tent, slightly to look out. Nothing. Just fog and the dim glow of the other tents. She figured maybe someone had gotten up to pee, But the footsteps returned, this time closer. She held her breath. Then the whispering started. Faint, broken syllables, like a dozen voices speaking just under the threshold of comprehension. It wasn't the wind. It had rhythm, intention. She stared at the tent wall, frozen. Then she saw it. A hand pressed against the outside of the fabric. The outline was clear, 5 fingers splayed, palm flat, pressing inward just enough to stretch the nylon. But the shape was wrong, too long. The wrist tapered into nothing. Elaine's blood turned to ice. She couldn't scream, couldn't move. The hand slid, dragging across the tent wall like it was feeling for something, then slowly retracted. She fumbled for her flashlight, clicked it on, and yanked the zipper open in one motion. Nothing. No footprints. No sound. Just a thick, cold silence pressing in from all sides. She waited outside for a while, shining the light in every direction. Still nothing. Eventually, she forced herself to go back in and lay down, staring at the ceiling of the tent, listening. The whispers didn't return, but she never fell asleep. At sunrise, she emerged to find the others already packing. No one said anything at first, but Elaine finally asked, "Did anyone get up last night?" They all shook their heads. She turned to Reuben. He was staring at the tree line, face pale. She told him what she'd seen. He didn't look surprised, just tired. He said quietly, "Sometimes the mountain tests people. Not everyone passes." She pressed him for more, but he wouldn't elaborate. Just told them they should leave quickly before the fog lifted. As they descended, Reuben walked at the back of the group, muttering softly under his breath. Elaine didn't understand the language, but it sounded old, like something passed down, not taught. When they reached the trailhead and finally sat in the van to go back, she asked again, "Was that something you've seen before?" He hesitated, then said, "There are things here that don't like being watched. If they notice you, you pretend you don't see them. You walk, you don't listen, you don't speak back." Elaine hasn't climbed since that trip. She sold most of her gear. Says she still hikes sometimes, but never above the clouds. She doesn't dream of peaks anymore, just fog. And the soft, impossible whispering of something pressing in from the dark, just outside the tent. I've been hiking with my best friend Casey for almost 10 years. We've climbed through deserts, jungles, snowy ranges, you name it. But the one climb I'll never forget wasn't even dangerous in the traditional sense. No avalanches, no injuries, no weather issues, just something wrong that I still can't explain. This happened in Colorado around 2019. We were doing a mid-October hike up Mount Antero, but decided to go slightly off the main trail to camp near the ruins of an old fire lookout cabin that Casey had read about online. Apparently, the structure had burned down in the late 70s under unclear circumstances. Most hikers avoided it, but we were in that cocky phase where the weirder, the better. We made it up to the spot around 5:30 p.m. right before sundown. The remnants of the cabin were eerie in a cinematic kind of way. Stone base still intact, parts of a crumbled wall and blackened wood scattered around. The weirdest thing? There were fresh boot prints in the dirt nearby. Not recent as in minutes ago, but definitely not from the 1970s either. Maybe within the last few days. We laughed it off. Other hikers must have had the same idea, right? Still, something about the place made my skin crawl. I chalked it up to altitude, fatigue, and the cold creeping in. We set up camp maybe 30 feet from the ruins. No fire, too much wind and dry brush, and just ate cold sandwiches with our headlamps on. By 8 p.m., the wind had completely died. Not a single breeze. Not even the trees rustled. It felt like the mountain had gone into mute mode. Around 11 p.m., I woke up needing to pee. I unzipped my sleeping bag, opened the tent flap, and immediately froze. There was a dim orange glow coming from the ruins. At first I thought it was a fire, but it didn't flicker. It glowed steadily, almost like a lantern or old oil lamp. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then I saw the silhouette. It looked like someone was standing in the middle of the ruins, facing away from me. The outline was slim, maybe a woman. Shoulder-length hair, a jacket or cloak that moved slightly like it was caught in a breeze. But there was no breeze. Everything around us was completely still. I quietly zipped the tent back up. Didn't even wake Casey. I just laid there with my eyes wide open, heart pounding like a drum. After maybe 20 minutes, I couldn't take it. I whispered, "Casey. Casey, dude. Wake up." He stirred and turned toward me, still half asleep. "What?" "There's someone at the ruins." That got his attention. He sat up and immediately turned off his headlamp. We listened. Nothing, no crunching of boots, no breathing, not even wind. We peeked through the flap together. Gone! No glow, no silhouette, just ruins under starlight. We both got out, swept the area with lights. Nothing. No signs of fresh prints, no objects, no lantern. No signs that anything had ever been there. We didn't talk much the rest of the night. Just sat awake in silence, occasionally scanning the darkness with our lamps. Morning couldn't come soon enough. When we finally packed up at first light, Casey wandered over to the far side of the ruins and called me over. There was a slab of stone I hadn't noticed before, maybe part of the original floor. Etched into it, barely visible, were the words, "Leave by dawn." That wasn't there the day before. I swear to you I would have noticed it. I had taken a photo of that exact spot when we arrived, just to frame the composition against the sunset. We checked my phone. Nothing on the photo. That stone was bare. I don't know if someone was messing with us or if we witnessed something older, but I do know we've never gone back, and we never will. No matter how beautiful that summit looks from below,